You are listening to the Pencil and Paper Podcast Network.
I'm Katrina, and I love anime.
I'm Steven, and I'm aware of anime.
But what if that affection could rub off?
Perhaps that excitement in her eyes got me curious.
I could offer up some solid anime.
I could give them a watch, just to see what all the fuss is about.
And maybe, just maybe,
I could learn to love anime too.
Welcome to Inspired by a Weeaboo. Welcome back to Inspired by a Weeaboo. I am your host, Katrina, and with me is my husband, Steven.
Hello.
We just finished episode 4 of Fullmetal Alchemist. And Steven, what did you think?
Well, I was actually kind of surprised that they were continuing with the narrative in which we last left off. I kind of thought maybe we would go back to where we saw them last, since we kind of went to a flashback episode, but we're actually continuing to see how they went on their journey to go become, I guess, legit alchemists, or join the, what is it called? The
state, the military.
State. Okay, the state alchemy.
Yes.
You know, I want to be a state alchemist is what he says. And we come across, or they kind of come into town, to this one little town, because they hear the name. Hold on, I'm going to remember because I was hanging on to it. I forgot.
Mahjong or Mahjong, something like that.
I feel like
it sounds like Mahjong as in the game.
Yeah, but it's not that. And I kept repeating it in my head so I wouldn't forget it. I forgot it. So look at me. I'm doing great. But anyway, Mahjong, we're just going to call him Mahjong. He was apparently someone that their father knew, and that kind of intrigued them. And he also seemed like he was, knew something about the, how do they refer to it? Reviving.
Oh, human
alchemy.
Alchemy or human transmutation.
Human transmutation, that's the word. And, of course, that intrigued them because they want to do that. Now, this actually raised a few questions for me. Because the one thing because Mahjong had been dabbling with it because he wanted to get his love back, Corinne. See, I remembered her name. And he mentioned that Al was special, like how that happened. So what he was doing, reviving or trying to revive Corinne through essentially like puppets or dummies.
Yes.
But what specifically was he doing? Like what was he actually creating?
Basically, he was putting the girls' souls into the puppets, but it's not the same way that Edward put Al. Okay. Because if you notice, also, when he does this, it's not like he's doing any kind of equal exchange. Edward gave up his arm to seal Al's soul into the metal suit.
Okay, that's the little detail that I was trying to hang on to, because you did kind of mention that previously, was that he gave up himself, or part of himself, to allow Al to go into the suit. So this guy is just circumventing that, but he's been kidnapping girls in the town, I'm assuming.
Yes,
so, like,
he's
the sister
been kidnapping and pretty much killing girls in the town.
So,
and yes, the sister was the last one.
What was the little girl's name? They said it at the end. I was trying to hang on to it.
Dadgummit.
The little paper girl. We'll call her the paper girl. And so she had mentioned that her sister had died, and then I guess they never specifically stated it, but you can put two and two together. He took her, put her into the body, and that's kind of the vision. Now, I was starting to think, and then, of course, they kind of didn't necessarily say it was her, but I guess she was just watching. I was starting to think that Lust.
Yes.
Okay. Lust was behind all this, but she was just watching from a distance.
Yeah.
Okay. So she had nothing to do with it, because I started to wonder after we saw the one that he kind of, or Mahjong set on fire, that okay, well, she might have something to do with it or whatever, but she was just watching. And then she makes note of, but she say that, oh, you're just using regular alchemy, like you're nothing special.
Basically, he's not special. He's just average.
Yeah. So I guess she was keeping an eye on him because she was hoping that perhaps maybe he had tapped into the human transmutation. And they all seem to be obsessed with this, I notice.
Yes.
But why the sins? That's
You'll find out.
I'm
They are
about that.
They are a piece of the puzzle for human transmutation.
Okay. So
everything's connected.
I got you. I heard. Now, another thing I wanted to note about this episode, and I'm not saying that it was just in this episode specifically, but it's just something I started to note. Now, in most anime, and this may be one of those details that people look at when they watch an anime, and probably one of the reasons that some people might not take it seriously, is you have those comedic moments, like when Ed gets butthurt because someone called him, what'd she call him this time? Short or pipsqueak or whatever. And he's just like, ah, and there were like 2 or 3 moments where he's like, how dare you? And just starts, having his moment. Yeah. And while they may seem like little silly moments in the show, I also take them as moments of levity for a much darker story that you're wrapping around in, because it's like, okay, we're going to give you these moments so you can just kind of have a laugh or two at the silliness before we get into something really dark. Because what that guy was doing, pretty fucking dark.
Yeah.
Kidnapping little girls to try and revive some woman who happened to be there. Now that shows how blind he was.
Yeah.
And I don't think he loved that woman enough, because me personally, I feel in my heart of hearts that I will still see the same person in you 20, 30, 40 years from now. You may be aged up and people may see an older woman, but I'm still going to see you.
See, I always felt like it wasn't so much he didn't love her as much. I felt like he was so heartbroken that his love died, that he was blinded by it. So to him, she's always going to look like that person, the person who died. So when she came back and she's an older woman, because it had been 20 years. I mean, she never once says anything. And then again, if she would have said anything, I feel like he stayed blinded to it. And it's all because of that obsession. Right.
Now, I also kind of took note of he wasn't a train conductor. He was just security at the train station, I guess, when they caught the thief.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, we don't see Alchemist out. I mean, the people seem to be aware of it, but they also seem like that they're just like, alchemy. That's a thing. They're like, some people they know of it, but they don't see it, or it doesn't seem to be a common thing in the world in which they inhabit for most people. But yet you have a state-run agency for alchemists.
Yes. I mean, look at the desert village in the first episode. Like, they were amazed by them performing alchemy, even though they had seen it performed hundreds of times by the father. They just thought it was blessings. They didn't think it was, they thought it was God's divine power and everything. They didn't know it was alchemy. But you'll find, like, once they get to the main city, I mean, that's where the military station, that's where, you're going to see all the different factions and meet all the different people, and it's a big city.
Right.
But a lot of the smaller ones, they're kind of cut off because, they don't bring anything to the table, basically. They're just kind of forgotten.
Sure. Okay. I feel like there was something else I wanted to discuss. Okay. Well, we were talking about the time period in which this took place, and you said that does get answered later on. And this, I hope this doesn't come off wrong to some listeners, because I don't mean it this way. I'm not trying to whitewash. Okay.
Okay.
So just follow me here. But if I was to pick a part of the country that this took place in, Japan would not be my initial thought for it. You know what I mean? And Ed and Alphonse do not sound like Japanese names, especially with the last name Elric. There we go. I was still struggling with the for some reason. And
that's okay.
It just, like where you were talking about the live action movie, and they did Japanese characters and things like that. I understand it was made in Japan, but I have this gut feeling like if they were to ever do a live action adaptation stateside, they would cast white actors in the roles, and I feel that would be appropriate.
Well, see, it's funny, and that's why I can't wait till we can get to the movie, because it explains like what I'm just so scared I'm going to spoil something.
No, I mean, don't. I mean, if you feel like you're going to spoil something, no. But
I know.
But do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, he's blonde.
I mean,
he's a blonde
no,
kid.
that's what I was going to say. You're 100% right. It does not take place in Japan.
Okay.
It does not take place, Japan, Korea, China, nothing like that. But it does not take place in America either. It is another country.
Right.
And once you get to the movie and you see, the only thing I'm going to say is the other world, you'll understand what the time period is. Like, it explains every bit of it.
Well, I mean, if I was to take a guess, I'm thinking like Central Europe, somewhere in that general area, because the cart and buggy, the whole layout of the land, there's just so much of the landscape that reminds me of like old England and that type of area. Maybe not England specifically, but the old Europe and all the areas.
It's not England.
Okay. Well, I was using that as a baseline, but.
See, and I feel like if I told you the country, like, you would know everything else that you have the questions for.
And I don't, I mean, I'm not asking for them. I'm hypothesizing off the top of my head. Based on everything that I'm seeing, these are the things I'm getting. And I don't, like I said, I understand there was that big discussion with Ghost in the Shell, whitewashing the character. And we've had that discussion. But for me, these characters do not seem like they would be whitewashed if they were white, and I don't mean that for any other reason, because they look like two little white kids.
Yes.
And like that they would be of European descent of some sort.
Matter of fact, I just realized you're going to realize the time period and everything else when one character is introduced.
Okay.
The head of the military. When they introduce them and you hear, how they address him and just how everything's laid out. I
mean, I was just hypothesizing based on everything that we've seen thus far. And I could also be wrong when it comes to fireworks, because fireworks are very popular in China and Japan. And we saw fireworks in this episode, so, just saying. But they are popular everywhere else. They're not just...
No, like I said, it would make sense for them to be white, but I also would understand why people might not want to see them portrayed like that.
Sure.
But it makes sense. Same way I continue to say, and people might hate me for it, but Major from Ghost in the Shell, Scarlett Johansson playing her, made sense, because Major was based off of Caucasian. That she was supposed to look white. She was not Asian.
Right. And I think sometimes some of these people who make these outrageous claims, I sometimes wonder if the loudest voices are the people who do not understand the source material. So they see snippets. You get these clickbaity headlines and then they run with it. And they're like, look, whitewashing. Ah! Whitewashing would be, for me, at this point, we're going to do a Spider-Man movie with Miles Morales and we're going to cast a white guy. That, no. Absolute what? That's stupid.
Or Black Panther with a white guy.
Yeah, that's stupid. No,
Yeah.
absolutely not. Some characters, I think we've discussed this privately before, but
like
in
Little
our,
Mermaid, perfectly fine for her to be any other ethnicity other than white. She's a fucking fish.
Yeah, I feel that there are some characters in which their race are part of who they are. They are defined as such. And then there are other characters that it doesn't matter. Like, they are not defined by their race. They are just characters who can be swapped out. And it doesn't hurt and it doesn't change anything. And just to be aware of that. I mean, it's not a big deal for, like, when people got so pissed about Heimdall being black in Thor. I mean, my God. It's a fictional character and granted, they're all fictional characters. I get it. But good. Come on.
I know.
So,
but anyway.
Again, I'm not, I'm not saying that what they did with the Japanese live action adaptation was wrong or anything. Just basing from what I'm seeing, that feels inaccurate, from a casting perspective. But I get it because it was, they probably didn't have the means in which to cast, American actors or even from other countries to have a tone that they're looking for. So I don't know, but I'm getting off on a tangent. So I'm done. I mean, we discussed the episode. So
yes, and we are ready to jump into episode 5. So Stephen, take it away.
As usual, every week, go tell all your friends and whomever who love anime that they can find us on their favorite podcasting platform. Inspired by Weeaboo should be everywhere you listen. And if you want to help support the show, go to patreon.com/pencilpaperproductions. And you can also find us on YouTube at youtube.com/pencilpaperproductions. And if you want to just keep up with the show easily, you can bookmark us on pencilpaperproductions.com/inspiredweeaboo.
All right, my little weebs. Until next time.
This has been a Pencil and Paper Podcast Network production.